Well, welcome back, everyone, to Hidden Treasure, and I'm Jimmy.
And I'm Brad, and today we're going to be talking about habits.
Habits of thought.
Habits of thought.
Good habits and bad habits.
All right, so today, Jimmy, we're talking
Yeah.
about habits. Tell me what you think about habits.
I think a habit is just something we do over and over. Something we got, like we say, I've just got a habit of doing that. Sometimes we have good habits. Sometimes we have habits that are not so good for us.
Right.
And good habits is what we're after, and we want to try to avoid the bad habits. And it's easy to be once you get into a habit, it's very difficult to transcend out of that habit. Have you noticed that?
It's hard to make changes.
It is. It's hard to. It's almost like the habit has gravity
Right.
that holds you in place and won't let you go. And and that's what we want to talk about. Not only the habits, but how do you get out of the bad habits and make your way into good habits?
Right.
Because we found there is a way, and there's the way you think. There's different levels. There's not one way to think. There's many different ways. There's positive ways and there's negative ways, and that can be a habit in the way we think. And so what we want to do is transform bad habits of thought into good habits of thought. So that's what we want to talk about, right?
That's right. Things that are going to be beneficial, and habits go back from the time we were born. Right. There's things we've been doing, from the time we were youngins all the way up to adulthood, and the thing to kind of look at is, are you getting the results out of those habits that you want? Are you getting the benefit out of them? And if not, maybe by tweaking a habit or changing a habit, that might make a big difference in your life.
Mm-hmm. It could make a huge difference. So how would you define habit?
Yeah, so I think a habit's just something you do enough to where it becomes second nature.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, the habit does require thought and energy to make the change. Maybe even documenting when you're doing certain things or the way you're thinking. But I think after the hardest part of making changes is that first week. Once you get through the first week, things get a little bit easier. And I believe I'm correct in saying after 2 weeks, a habit is formed, right? Is it 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
They're talking. The experts say like 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
But who knows? It could be 2 weeks. For some people, I'm sure it is, and for others,
Right.
it may take longer.
Right.
But probably safe to say about 30 days to really create a new habit. What I've noticed is the energy itself has its own habits. Like the energy of anger has habits of rage, revenge, and retaliation.
Mm-hmm.
And the habits of love is kindness, grace, and mercy and compassion.
Right.
So you really need to work on your emotional nature to transform your habits, because you're not going to be able to create new habits if you're still down here in low energy. It just won't work. You're working against the tide, you might say. It's like swimming against the current. You're just going to wear yourself out.
Right. So I want to come back to this, but I just want to ask you, so what are some habits that you do every day? I mean, if you think about it, and I'm putting you on the spot, but what are some habits that we do that are just second nature? You don't even think about it now.
Probably just have a habit of thanking God for, my life and for looking out for me, and the habit of saying I need you like the flowers need the rain, and habit of praying for people if they need help, and the habit of sending peace, joy, love, and light out. That's something I do every day.
Right.
Hardly ever miss a day. Maybe on the weekends, I
Yeah.
might miss a day or two. But
What about like day to day physical stuff, not just spiritual, like habits, things that maybe a habit you do now that at first was a little bit difficult, and just trying to explain how the thinking habit is going to be like the physical habit is something you need to work on. But are there any habits that at first, and I'll give you an example. Just
give me an example.
So when I was growing up, it wasn't a law to wear seatbelts, and nobody wore them. Very few people wore seatbelts. This was back in the '80s when I started driving. but then it became a law. And I tell you, a lot of people, they just dug their feet in the sand and said, I'm not
Mhm.
wearing a seatbelt. I don't care if it's the law or not. But, it's something that I remember I changed that habit early on. I do it without even thinking about it.
Mhm.
And, it's something that can save your life. That was a tough habit. Now, when I said habits, that right there is like changing your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, going from being cynical, critical, to being more loving, accepting, being more
Mhm.
compassionate, forgiving. It's something that takes some time.
Yeah, I have a habit more of taking care of the yard like leaves.
Yeah,
They're falling now, and I just stayed. I had the habit of getting out there every time they covered the ground, and instead of I used to let them just pile up until the end,
right.
and then of course it was a lot harder because it was heavier. They were wet,
Mhm.
from rains, and they never dried out, and it get pretty thick. And now I don't. I just stay on top of it, and it's so much easier. I found because um, it's not hard to get up a light load of leaves, a lightly covered ground, but a heavily covered is a
Right.
lot more work.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see that until I said, let's try it a different way and see what happens. So
Right.
that turned out to be a good habit. And of course, just get in the habit of cutting your yard. Don't let it get too high
Yeah.
because the higher it gets, the harder it is to cut.
Right.
But sometimes you can be lazy and don't want to do it.
Well, that's true, and I
Yeah.
think when you see the results, and I'm glad you mentioned lazy because I'm definitely, I've got a lazy streak in me, but I know I like nice things. I like clean things. I like things being
Hmm.
organized. Those dishes aren't going to get washed by themselves, right?
Hmm.
That bed is not going to be made by itself. Those floors aren't going to get clean. Just get in the habit of doing some things like that, to where it doesn't become a burden or a chore. It's just something you do, and there's a benefit there to it. And so we talked earlier about your mindset or your approach
Hmm.
toward things as far as creating habits. If you're going into something different that really isn't that big of a deal, but in your mind you make it out to be a huge challenge, guess what? It's going to be a chore. It's not going to be something you enjoy.
Right.
But if you go into it with an open mindset, and we talked about being open minded, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to learn. I'm going to get better as I go.
Yep.
Then I think change, and especially changing with your habits, are going to be a lot easier for you. We both have children that are adults now,
Hmm.
and we talked about this earlier about how you raised your first one a little bit different than your last, because you grew as a parent.
Right.
Your habits changed. You were a lot more understanding, a lot more patient with that last child than you were the first one. And we talked about unrealistic expectations. Your expectations became more in line because you realize, hey, this is a completely different person than my first child, or this is
Hmm.
completely different personality, attitude. And so
Right.
you become to be more um, open and accepting toward
So
others.
your habits of thought change as far as how you treat your children.
They do. When
Uh,
your mindset changes, and for me, it's happened as I've gotten older. I become better at things. My habits have changed because I see the results I'm wanting, I'm longing
mhm.
for.
Yep, that's the whole thing, and it is a process, folks. Again, everything we talk about is a process. But anyway, folks, we appreciate you tuning in. We hope that you'll just see for yourself how you can maybe create some more positive habits, some more, I guess you could say, habits that treat you better, that give you better results in
Well,
your life. So we
so
appreciate you tuning in, folks, and I hope peace, joy, love, and light will be with you always.
yep. And if you like this video, please hit like, subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And the best compliment you can give is to share this with other people.
God bless you all, folks.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Love
All
you.
right.